Al-Muallim stresses that the second round of talks hasn't failed, achieving an important role by scheduling to the next meetings thanks to the awareness of the Syrian negotiators. Lavrov, Moscow won't allow passing any UN Security Council resolution on Syria under humanitarian pretexts. Syrian Arab army units restore security and stability in Maan village of northern Hama countryside after eliminating the last gathering of terrorists who committed the massacre against civilians. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Irado Krikorian with the news in English. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said Russia would not let pass through the UN Security Council any resolution that leads to interference in Syria under humanitarian pretexts. In a press conference with his Eritrean counterpart Uthman Saleh in Moscow, Lavrov said the Geneva I communiqué represents an irreplaceable basis to resolve the crisis in Syria, and therefore Russia always calls for exerting more greater efforts in order to achieve this solution. Lavrov pointed out that all the parties that participated in the Geneva conference have understood that the opposition is fragmented, and in order to ensure holding a Syrian dialogue, all opposition parties should participate in this dialogue. The Russian foreign minister added that the United States doesn't play its entrusted role of working on a representation of the opposition in Geneva, as it hasn't convinced except one opposition party to participate, which means that a great part of the Syrian opposition did not participate in the dialogue. Lavrov pointed out that there is information which Russia will verify and which says that a new form of opposition is being formed, composed of all the opposition groups, which doesn't trust the negotiations and which will try once again to rely on the external force in Syria. Russia unfortunately expects these opposition groups to be supported as what happened in Libya. Lavrov pointed out that there are deliberate attempts to hold the Syrian government as responsible for crimes and atrocities by fabricating things and distortion of the facts. Mikhail Margelov, chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Federation Council of Russia, has called upon all sides not to be biased in judging Geneva II conference as a fiasco. Margelov expressed hope that only an optimistic evaluation of Geneva II conference be presented, pointing out that while the coalition delegation wanted to raise the issue of the transitional governing body, the official delegation of the Syrian Arab Republic sought to raise a very critical issue for Syria and the whole region: war on terrorism. He asserted that the International Conference on Syria witnessed the absence of important sides like Iran, pointing out that the internal Syrian opposition was not represented among the coalition delegation. Russia has voiced deep concern over the mounting number of the foreigners fighting in Syria along the terrorist armed groups, estimating their number to be 110,000 to 120,000. A source at General Staff of the Russian Armed Forces said that estimates of the number of the armed terrorist groups fighting in Syria approximate those by the Americans announced lately by the Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper. The source warned against information announced earlier by Clapper on training camps inside Syria to train the foreign terrorists to be transferred at a later stage to their homelands to perpetrate terrorist operations. The Kyrgyzstani intelligence agency announced that it arrested 6 persons to the north of the country who belong to terrorist groups that were planning to commit terrorist acts in the country. The agency pointed out that a number of the arrested were just back from Syria after they get trained with terrorist groups there. The media section in the intelligence agency said that the security forces were able to monitor the activities of a secret terrorist group in Aush province, and that group was planning to carry out terrorist acts on the Kyrgyzstani territories, pointing out that the 6 arrested persons are from the same province and aged between 20 to 30 years old. The Kyrgyzstani intelligence clarified that some of the arrested are members in a terrorist group and conducted special trainings in the camps of the terrorist organizations in Syria as they participated in fights. Deputy Prime Minister, Foreign and Expatriates Minister Walid al-Muallim said that the second round of talks in the Geneva conference did not fail, contrary to some media analyses or to the reactions of the French and British foreign ministers.
أنا أريد أن أؤكد عكس كل التحليلات.
Al-Muallim said that the second round of the Geneva conference achieved a very important point, thanks to the awareness of the Syrian negotiators when they announced Syria's agreement to the agenda proposed by the UN envoy to Syria, Lakhdar Ibrahimi, which starts off by rejecting violence and combating terrorism. He reiterated that talks did not fail, rather, they resulted in what the Syrian official delegation always demanded, which is an agenda for the upcoming Geneva meetings. On the pre-made orchestra in which the French and British foreign ministers held the Syrian Arab Republic delegation responsible for the failure of the talks, Al-Muallim said that this isn't surprising, as France and Britain have always been part of the conspiracy against Syria, noting that they made their accusations even before they were informed about what happened in the talks. Regarding the arming of the opposition, Al-Muallim noted that the U.S. has announced its funding and arming of what it calls moderate opposition since the beginning of the first round of talks, describing this as amusing. Foreign Minister Al-Muallim added that those who think that the U.S. stopped or will stop conspiring against Syria are delusional, as the U.S. has always been conspiring against Syria due to the Syrian people's steadfastness in the face of Israel, and as long as Syria is confronting Israel, then the U.S. will continue to conspire against it. On whether this conspiracy will reach the point of a direct U.S. military aggression, Al-Muallim said that such thing is mere media and psychological warfare, aiming at pressuring on the Syrian negotiators to hand over what the coalition delegation came to receive, adding that this is a delusion that will never happen. In response to a question on the French and American losses after the Geneva talks, the minister said that the Syrian Arab Republic delegation went to Geneva only to achieve the aspirations of the Syrian people by finding a solution to the crisis in Syria and relaying the Syrians' desire for the cessation of violence and terrorism. On the Russian position towards the talks in Geneva, Al-Muallim said that Russia has been fully informed on a daily basis about the results of each session, which is why it wasn't surprised by what happened. On Wendy Sherman's statement that the document presented by the coalition is good, Al-Muallim said that the coalition didn't present a document. Rather, they read an interposition asserting that the decision about the presidency isn't up to Sherman or the coalition delegation, as this decision belongs to the Syrian people, who have the right to decide upon Syria's future. In response to the statement by the British Foreign Minister William Hague, who said that not reaching an agenda for the next stage is a very serious matter, and he's blaming the Syrian official delegation for this, Al-Muallim said, "I'd rather not respond to him, because he is ignorant about what happened during the talks. The agenda proposed by Brahimi is clear, and the Syrian delegation agreed to it." On whether the Syrian government is worried over what is happening in the southern front of the Syrian borders, Al-Muallim said that those who love their country must always be worried about it, but nothing is different from what has been happening for over 3 years, as the smuggling of arms and terrorists from the south and the attempts to attack the Syrian people continue, but the Syrian leadership and the Syrian Arab army will be ready to confront them.
Hezbollah Secretary General Al-Sayyid Hassan Nasrullah asserted that the other danger that threatens the region after the Israel occupation entity is the threat of takfiri terrorism, which exists in all the countries of the region. In a speech on the anniversary of the leaders' martyrs, Nasrullah said that this takfiri terrorism is formed of armed groups that pursue an exclusionary approach putting everyone who opposes them within the circle of takfirism. Nasrullah cited an evidence of this, the ongoing fight between the two terrorist groups of the so-called the State of Islam in Iraq and the Levant and Jabhat al-Nusra on the Syrian land, despite the fact that they carry the same takfiri thought. Nasrullah pointed out that the new data showed that most of the countries which funded, armed and sent foreign territories to fight with the takfiri groups in Syria have started to talk about their being terrified of the danger in case those terrorists returned back to their countries. Emphasizing the national principles and expressing support to the Syrian Arab army in its war against terrorism, in Jable of Latakia countryside, a huge rally was organized, where the citizens held the national flags and banners to express their allegiance to their country and their gratitude to the Syrian Arab army, asserting that the official delegation in Geneva is the real representative of the Syrian people and they advocate against the takfiri terrorism.
This is not the first time people express themselves, their real opinions, their frank wishes. The country, the Syrian Arab army, and the beloved President Bashar al-Assad are three clear facts all people agree on. People in Jabla have come to say to the whole world, we love our beautiful flag with its dear two green stars. We love our President Dr. Bashar al-Assad, the kind, educated, and good man. And we support his principles, ideas, and his ideology. We love our national army and highly estimate its great sacrifice to save our cities, souls, and blood from the criminal terrorists who have come from all over the world to kill life on the Syrian land. God protect our national army, our country, and our president. What do you say to the countries that support terrorism in Syria? We are stronger than their terrorism, and Syria will return stronger. Stop terrorism in our country, Syria. This is Syria which will never fall down. It will stay strong. This great crowd comes to say to the whole world that the Syrian people has broken the word impossible with his determination, and all those people are here to support the Syrian Arab army and the Syrian government. People say we will go on, we will survive, we will defeat this dirty conspiracy.
For the English news, Syrian channel, Jabla, Ranim al-Basha.
Units of the armed forces have restored security and stability to Maan village in Hama's northern countryside after eliminating the remains of the terrorist gatherings who infiltrated to the village and committed a massacre, slaughtering 42 of its locals. Most of them were children and women. Moreover, other units of the Syrian Arab army destroyed dens and gatherings of terrorists along the road of Al-Kabariya Maan road, killing scores of them. Among the killers were Ali Marai, Bilal Ahmad Khatib, Hassan Hussein, Ziyad Musa Al-Hamdo, Muhammad Jum'a Al-Mansour, and Abd al-Razzaq Uthman. With this, we end our news for today. Thank you for watching. For more details about Syria and the region and to view this bulletin again, you can always visit our website in English, syriaonline.sy. Now to latest business and market news with Vani Gunjan, but after a short break.